All right, welcome to the Action Shooting Show. We're back. It's been a while. We're hoping to get a couple ones done here in the near future, but welcome back. We haven't seen you guys in a while. We got with us tonight Tiger Schultz, our favorite Marine, one of our favorite Marines. We have a couple favorite Marines, but he's definitely high on the list. His video or picture may come in and out. He's having some connectivity issues, but we're hoping to keep him on here as long as we can. The other one we have is Mr. Michael Ford. So he's there. Hopefully you can hear him. He's got a new headset, so we'll see what we got. We got an important one tonight. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and that is safety in the shooting sports. So as most of you probably know, Mike and I, Tiger, we run matches, we RO matches. We RO a lot, a lot of matches. Tiger's been a little bit out of it, but he's definitely got a lot of experience in that too. And there was a lot of stuff that we see, generally new shooters, sometimes medium shooters, sometimes even real experienced shooters, do things that aren't as safe as they should be, or maybe need to go back to the basics. So we want to talk about some of that. Nothing here is, we're not picking on anyone in particular. We're not trying to point out anything or step on anyone's toes. We love these sports. We want to keep it safe. And so sometimes you got to talk about this stuff. And I guess to get it out there, like, we've all made mistakes on these matches and gotten DQ'd for stuff, or, got the finger call, or whatever it is. We're rushing around, we're trying to race, and sometimes we are a little negligent, and someone calls us on it, or we catch ourselves, and we got to get better. So that's the point of this. As always, we say, as I try to say, if you enjoy this, give us a like, give us a subscribe, share it with your friends. We're trying to get the word out there, and I mean, this whole show's to help people. So we hope that you can help us do that. So anything you guys want to add before I get into the first? I think we lost Tiger. Mike, you want to add anything before I get into the first topic?
No, let's dive right in, because I think we'll end up kind of adding as things go on.
Yep, I agree. All right, so the best way to start this, I think we're going to go through the 4 rules of firearm safety, and I want to let people know and kind of talk, especially new people, how this applies. Because I think sometimes people get this idea that the 4 rules of firearm safety are like a square range, or like, well, those are a good idea, but like, yeah, there's times that, and I can't, there's nothing absolute. I don't want to say something and have someone go, well, there's this time where you do, but we're going to talk in the shooting sports. It's hard for me to think of a situation where you would neglect one of these rules. So we're just going to go through it. Depending on, there's 3 rules, there's 4 rules, depending on what organization. What we're hitting tonight is always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. Treat all guns as if they're loaded. Finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and know your target and what's beyond it. And we're going to go through each of these and talk about what we've seen, positive, negative, what people have been doing, maybe that they should work on, and kind of how this applies to probably a lot of it run and gun, but also 3-gun, USPSA, IDPA. I mean, this all falls into the same branch. Some of them, you have to be more conscious of things than others. So as an example, if you go to a steel challenge match, target, your target and what's beyond it, a lot of considerations have been taken out of that. If, for instance, you're out hunting, know your target and what's beyond it becomes way more important and sometimes way more complicated, because now we don't have a big backdrop behind us. We don't have one steel target, bunch of range officers that set it up. So we're going to try to hit that. So the first one is treat all guns as if they are loaded. So Mike, why don't you kind of start us off on some of the stuff you see in running gun, 3-gun stuff, where this is, people need some work.
Yeah. Yep. It's a big deal. when you see people walking around even before the match, let's talk about pulling guns out of cars, you're going up to start finish, you're waiting on your run time. There's a lot of people around you, and we're not even talking adults. A lot of these matches, there's families, there's kids, people have their pets and stuff. So if you're waving a gun around, you need to be really conscious of what is going on, your environment. You got to treat it like it's loaded. So normally for me, like the first thing I do when I pull a gun out of a bag, it starts at home. When I go to prep for a match, I clear the gun. A lot of times, even like going to a running gun, I'll flag the rifle and put it in the bag. A lot of times, if my luggage works for it, I'll have the pistol in a holster. I'll clear it, holster it, put it like in an ALS or something where it's not going anywhere. Then when I get to the actual range, when I pull that rifle out, I verify before it even leaves the vehicle. Normally, into the trunk, when I'm getting the bag open, I'm checking, hey, that rifle's clear. There's still a flag in it, maybe. Same thing. I'll check that pistol and clear it. Goes right back in the holster. Then it'll stay in the holster, and then like I'll use the Safari Land mounting system where I can take it on and off, but stays in that holster, and the rifle's gonna stay bolt lock to the rear if possible, or leave the flag in. Clear up to the start line when I get cleared by the staff actually running the event. So yeah, be really really cautious even in the beginning. It's always something that I wonder when I see people walking around with, you can tell maybe questionable gun handling skills, and you know I don't think an RO's cleared them yet. So be really mindful and respectful of the process even before you step off the start line or shoot your first bay at a 3-gun match, to make sure that you're being safe and respectful of the people in your environment when you're out, coming up to stages, when you go to maybe unsling that rifle, or go to show an RO, or it's pretty common at running gun, if there's wait time and the ROs are slammed, competitors will clear each other's rifles. But when you're coming up to a group of people, don't be swinging your muzzle around and muzzling them with your rifle, even when you're getting ready to show clear, because they don't know it's clear yet. It's a big safety thing. So continue to follow the rules of treating every gun like it's loaded all the way through the match. So when you're running by people, I know I've caught at one of the facilities, they did sporting clays at the same time as a running gun. And so I'm coming off a stage, I'm stowing everything and getting my rifle slung up, and I caught, realized out of the corner eye that the way I was holding my rifle and getting it slung up was I was muzzling a group of people shooting sporting clays about 50 yards away. And you could tell the look on their face, they weren't real happy. And it was a oh shit moment for me, because I was busy policing my gear, getting those mags shuffled, getting my rifle slung up. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter how high a level of competitor you are. You got to be, conscious. Try to minimize those mistakes. Not saying they're not going to happen, but let's minimize the amount and the potential impact from the moment you pack your guns to come to the moment you put your guns back in the safe at the end of the weekend. Be safe about it. Sorry I rambled about all that. That was a lot.
Yep, you're good. Yeah, Tiger. So we started off with treat all guns as if they're loaded. Mike was kind of going in. Do you have anything you want to add into that?
No, that's I heard most of his, so he pretty well covered it.
All right, and the thing that I'll kind of piggyback on, and this is, it's very easy to get complacent with guns. The longer you're in this, the longer you use them, you get very, very complacent, or you can get very complacent because you get comfortable with them. And that's not a bad thing. Like, it's a tool. It can be dangerous. My circular saw can be dangerous. I shouldn't be in fear of using my circular saw. I shouldn't be in fear of using my gun. But with that, we have to also understand that these are dangerous tools at times, and that we can't just be complacent and just get so lackadaisical that where we're not following the rules. Like Mike said, and this is, you're in a 360 world. He's doing something. He's trying to treat his gun as if it's loaded, and he notices that, oh, further out beyond where my vision was, there's people. I need to redirect my muzzle, because even though the RO checked it, he checked it as empty. Now, those people don't know it, but Mike's confident that it's empty because he just, 2 people have now checked it. He's still going to divert his muzzle because he's treating it as if it's loaded. So, this is the kind of thing we're talking about. The next rule is Mike's already kind of gone into a little bit, which is always keep guns pointed in a safe direction. I mean, this ties in with it very good, but there are some, and I kind of agree with Mike. People clear a gun on a stage, and sometimes this next rule just gets completely thrown out because they're like, oh, we just cleared it, it's empty. That's fine. Just treat it like it's loaded. When I was first taught gun safety, the saying was, pretend that there is a laser beam coming out the end of that gun, a lightsaber, and anything that muzzle goes by is going to get cut up by the laser, cut up by and so that's how you have to treat it. The muzzle at no point should be pointing at anything that you don't intend to destroy. I mean, that's don't point the gun at anything you don't intend to destroy. That's another common kind of saying or rule, that way that they state that rule. So I was going to share, Mike mentioned this beforehand, and this is a good one. So I've got a holster. I have an airsoft gun. You can see the big orange nozzle. Looking in there, this is clearly an airsoft gun. So because I'm not pointing even a cleared real gun at myself. So we see this a ton. I've got my holster. I've got my gun. We've done an unload and show clear, and I go to holster, and yep, we're just gonna find this holster. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I got a lot of meat inside here that I don't want a bullet in. So holstering is a very big safety issue I see. The other thing is they get done shooting and it's, the no look. There are certainly situations in life, there are different times where you may have to holster without looking. Me and Mike just shot a night match. We shot NV. Anyone that's used NV, you have very little vision through that. If it's very dark, even if you're looking underneath your nods, it's really hard to see your holster in the dark and look it in. There are techniques around it to do it safely, but during the day, whether it's on the clock or off the clock, when I'm done shooting, my eyes are going to it. I'm moving my hand out of the way. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm not going to teach you how to holster, but I'm watching the gun go into the holster, making sure it's actually in the holster, and then moving on. Like I said, even on the clock. Listen, I've had times where empty guns have popped out of the holster. Earlier this year, it's the first time it ever happened to me, but I went to holster. It was a retention holster. I thought it was in there far enough, and it wasn't. That's on me. I've been very conscious to, almost like go down and push it in, and then as I'm removing my hand, give the gun a tug, because then if the gun starts to come out, I know it, and if it doesn't, it's locked in. But that's a big one. Holstering, there's very little times where you should not look a gun into a holster or really focus on why you're holstering a gun. The other big one is, so we talk about 180 in the shooting sports. Normally you have like a backstop that is your, I tell people at my matches, the backstop straight in front of you, that's 0 degrees. You have a 180, so you can go 90 degrees to the left and 90 degrees to the right, and your muzzle is still pointed downrange in a safe direction. Sometimes that's not a 180, sometimes it's shorter, but especially new people, but people kind of forget that 180 is up and down too. So if I'm running with a long gun, and I got it like this, shotguns are real bad about this. Next thing you know, someone's muzzle is pointed up in the air, kind of up range. Or again, this is with pistoling. They go to holster, they're going to do something, and they're pointing the gun at their feet. They're pointing the gun at their themselves when they're trying to holster. I saw a couple people this weekend at the night match rack out their round, before they put their gun away, they're using their light to find the round on the ground, and then they're reaching their hand down to pick up the round. And some of these were, and I mentioned, I said, hey, I got a light here. Let's put your gun in the holster. Let's not use our weapon light and our hand down on the ground. Even if they're not directly muzzling their hand, it's really not a good habit to be in. So that's I guess a pet peeve of mine is when people try to do anything, they're done shooting a pistol, they're off the clock, and they do anything but slide down, hammer down, and holster. Holster, pick up your mags. Get it in the holster before you pick up your spare rounds, adjust your gear on. Once it's in the holster, we're safe to do other stuff. So there's my little rant on that. Tiger, what do you have to add about that topic? I'm not hearing Tiger. Mike, if you go in, and if you can jump in, we'll let you in.
Yep, that just really reinforcing that holster. The amount of people I see index in towards them, driving the muzzle into the holster instead of using their wrist to move the muzzle parallel to their body is a huge issue. I see it all the time with people on the load and make ready doing it, not just after they've been cleared. So get used to taking that glance, making a good smooth index, treating every gun like it's loaded. A lot of times we are handling loaded guns. And so something that Ryan and I see really happen pretty often is when people grab the front of their slide to rack the round. Well, when they go and they index their hand up, they'll sweep over the top and muzzle their hand this way. Or, maybe they'll have a couple fingers out as they come in from the side. There's been a few times I was wondering if I was going to see some missing fingers. And, it doesn't matter if you're running a gun with a manual safety. You're not racking the slide on that 1911, 2011 unless the safety's off. Your Glock, well, there is no safety. Whatever you're doing, take the time, think through the process. The matches are not won and lost on how fast you can unload and show clear. Probably a lot of our fellow ROs heard me last weekend say, shoot time is expensive, run time is cheap. You're clearing your guns most of the time, or if you have a load make ready on your run time, if it's a running gun, or off the shot clock on like a 3-gun match or a USPSA. So take the time, do it safe, people, please, for the love of God. I've not had to use a med kit yet, but I think I came close a few times. Ryan, you are muted.
Thank you. It looks like we lost Tiger again. Hopefully he can get back in here. Thanks, Mike. This really is. I almost treat this as the most important rule. If you're not pointing a gun at anything you don't intend to destroy, if you're conscious of your muzzle, even if your finger gets on the trigger, less bad things happen. Even if the guns rarely malfunction to where like a hammer just drops with no external action. But let's say a complete failure, the sear breaks and the gun goes off. If it's always pointed in a safe direction, any issues are highly minimized. So we're going to talk a little bit later. There are ways to practice this at home. Anytime you touch a gun, you should really be practicing it. So we'll probably get back to some of this, but we'll go on to the next thing. So this is another hot button one. Finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. I'll say right now, because I know people are listening to this and they're going to bring this up, and maybe this is the gray area in competition sport. I don't know if it's that gray, but people will teach. Here we go with the demo gun again. They will teach as you're coming up on target that you get your trigger on and prep the trigger. Good shooters, competent. There's instructors of all. I I think the important piece to remember with that, as far as I've heard, no one's ever talking about getting on the holster, right out of the holster. What they're talking about is you are up and indexed in the direction of the target. So maybe I don't have it in my sights, like my sights aren't directly on it before I get my finger on it, but I'm parallel. It's like if that gun went off and it doesn't hit the target, it's going to hit pretty darn close and it's in a safe direction. Now, if this is a situation where there are all kinds of things around the target that you're not supposed to shoot, I think I would make an argument that you shouldn't have your finger on until you're really ready. But as long as it's a safe direction, people who train to prep the trigger as they're coming up on the draw, use your, I hate to say common sense, but like if the action is in a safe direction, if it were to go off, that's your prerogative. But I would say if you're a new shooter, new competitor, whatever, don't be too quick to get your finger on the trigger, because your match is probably not won and lost because you got your finger on the trigger while you were still indexed low, or you waited until we got right up and I'm on and then I put my finger on the trigger. So Casey Eusebio, JJ Racaza's shooting Steel Challenge, where every tenth of a second is a place. They've got different, that's a different thing. That's a different concern. They've got different training. They do them. But if you're new to the sport, I'd really be focused on that finger being off the trigger until you are 100% ready to shoot. And when you are, and we're going to go on this next one, I'm sure Mike has things to add to this. When you are not shooting, your finger is off the trigger, and not just off the trigger. I know this is off the trigger. That's all well and good. If I trip and I grasp, there we go. Off the trigger, like on a pistol, this is up on the slide, is a really, really good place for it. And on a long gun, like an AR or something, there is a frame, there is a stock there somewhere to get that, not just out of the trigger guard, but up high. So again, now if I, you get that flinching instinct when you fall or you go to grab something in your other hand, it's up out of the way. And hey, you know what? With a gun like this, whenever I come off target, my safety's on. As soon as I get on target, I start to take it off. This is, if I don't know if this is how well, for me to take this on and off is fractions of a second. And it's the same thing for an AR. Whenever I'm off target and moving to a different position, my AR is on safe. When I'm off and it's more than a transition, I'm off the trigger, or off on safe. I'd say the exception, and I don't know that this is good or bad, shotguns tend to be really, really hard to get on and off safe, harder. So it's a little bit bigger of a movement for me to put it on there. But again, my finger's always off the trigger. Mike, why don't you share what, anything you see with?
Yeah, that flinch instinct is real. Not exactly gun related, but I flinched on a trigger and it flayed me pretty good. Back in the youth days of doing construction, doing timber frame building, using a big commercial drill and a high-speed boring fluted bit. I was going up a ladder. The guy was supposed to hold it. He wasn't paying attention. I'm 2.5 stories up on the side of a mountain, and the ladder moves. And what do? Flinch. Well, one hand was holding the long boring bit, the other was holding the grip of the drill. And I skinned the palm and all the fingers and everything. So not a gun, still a trigger with a grip. And so, yes, I absolutely, doesn't matter what handgun I run, I always have gotten to the point that when I'm not shooting, across the target transition, that's one thing. But the moment that I'm actually breaking the gun down off the target, going to move or, face another array, if I'm actually breaking off, my finger will come up in parallel on the side of the frame. up onto the slide, depending on the handgun and the dimensions there. AR, I do the same thing. I'll index up, clear up to sometimes where I'm feeling like the trigger pins and stuff on the side of the lower, just getting up out of there. I still find myself doing it on a shotgun. It's just a really good habit to get into. You want to make sure if you got a manual safety, you know, uh, try to get that safety on. I think I don't know if Ryan wants to dive into this a little bit later, but you're just trying to put the potential of an accident uh, farther out by introducing steps. And with proper weapon handling technique, you're talking, to plan for, that motion, it's probably not even a tenth of a second. If you're planning into your movement and you've practiced it and maybe dry fired it, which you should, if you're dry firing anything, I would say the safety stuff even trumps the shooting stuff.
Yep, we'll get into some suggestions for that.
But yeah, get that finger away from the trigger. We just had a situation at what was that, Heartbreak, where
Heartbreak.
Unfortunately someone had to be disqualified because they torched around over a berm at a 45-degree angle, because when they were finishing a reload and then going back to index onto the target, they torched a round off. There's absolutely no reason for that to happen. None. People were finishing the stage and doing just fine. And the guy probably would have finished the stage if he hadn't have done that. People.
Yeah. Yep.
Square yourself away.
Yep. And so a note with this, Mike's talking about, well, sometimes his finger's not off the trigger when he's transitioning. Again, the thing to keep in mind is everything in transition is a safe place to shoot.
It's transitions on the array. If I'm changing a target array, that finger's coming off.
Yeah. So if there's some situation where Mike's shooting something here and then there's another target, but between that target's a person, hey, guess what? Mike's finger's not on the trigger. He's not just transitioning straight across, because now he's breaking the rule we talked about a second ago. I think the big point there is understand and think about how these rules apply and how it's working. There's a lot of context to it, but anything we're doing has to be safe. So again, we're going to go on. Target, know your target and what's beyond it. Now, in a lot of competition, this is very squared away for you. At a USPSA match, you have a bay with 3 walls on the side. As long as you keep your muzzle down range, not breaking the 180, you are in a safe direction. So Steel Challenge, same thing. You got like targets here, everything straight ahead. It's fairly cut and dry. Where you start getting into, and it's obviously that's still important, but some of this decisions and thinking is taken care of for you. Where it gets a little more complicated is stuff like run and gun, 3-gun that has like outdoor what is the word I'm looking for? Natural terrain stages. Because now you don't just have a berm. Sometimes you're shooting in a valley. Okay, well, there's a big wall behind me. That makes sense. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're shooting in a flat field. There's trees behind it. Okay, well, the match director knows, actually, no, the hill keeps going up and up. You can't see it. That's a safe direction. We ran into this match shot last weekend. Lateral limits. Why don't you explain a little bit about that, Mike? So, because that was your point as far as like knowing your lateral limits.
Yeah, so lateral limits kind of goes hand in hand with like a 180. It's how far you can swing your muzzle, laterally left, right, before you start coming into danger zones. So the 180 is generally how stages are designed, but like the stage that IR rode last weekend, the rifle shooter really only had about like 20, 30 degree area that was really safe, because probably off the target engagement area, they probably only had to go, it wasn't even 45 degrees, and they would be back aiming down. And we were up on a hill, and there was bays and stuff down below us with shooters and ROs in it. So if you took that muzzle more than 45 degrees past that lateral limit, picture a slice of the pie, and you're in the center of the pie. At the edges of the crust, that's your lateral limits. That's could be 180 if you're in a big bay at a 3-gun match. On a rifle course of fire like the one I was on, those lateral limits were pretty small. At 200 yards, you still only had probably about a 50-yard to 100-yard at 200-yard cross section of where it was safe to do that. Because if you went too far to the right, past your lateral limits, you could send rounds down into a bay. Even though there was people the opposite direction, probably 1,500 yards plus away, we're all shooting AR-15s and 5.56, and if you break that lateral limit to the left, then you absolutely could put a round down where people are at. So it was really important we tried to make sure we marked the impact zones, lateral limits, and even with some pretty squared away ROs up there, people trying to find targets in the dark using flashlights and night vision, they just went wild. They would try to just sweep this whole field when the like you could see the berms were laid out pretty much linearly in front of us. And so we were constantly having to be right on top of people to make sure that other people on the range and at the facility were safe. So, if you're coming into a running gun stage and you're not sure, ask your lateral limits. In a 3-gun match, we're spoiled, or USPSA, where they're pretty well defined. They're pretty easy to pick up. But natural terrain, 3-gun, running gun stages and stuff, it's pretty easy to make an assumption about, hey, I'm probably good here, and you might not be. ROs are trying to do the best they can, and like my stage, the shooter got a brief and had their load and make ready about 50 yards downhill. So their visual presentation of the range and where they would be doing their shooting challenge was at the load make ready was not where they finished. So they probably didn't have, a great way to ask questions about it or whatever. But yeah, and that's something for match directors too to think about. The lateral limits things had to be addressed pretty early on RO day. So that big deal. Think about that. That muzzle line extends to infinity.
Yeah, and that's important not just with the shooting, but like when I'm loading the gun. We were loading the gun on the clock. We don't want to be loading and pointing down towards that other bay he's talking about, because I was down in that other bay, and I like matches, and getting a 223, through the arm doesn't sound like a good, at best, or worse, doesn't sound like a good way to enjoy the match. So, great points. We will go on from here, and but that's kind of the stuff we're going to talk about is maybe a little bit more nuanced in this, but those are the basics. Maybe if you're new to the sport, really consider and think about that next time you're at a match. Look around and look who's paying attention to that, who's not, and maybe think about some considerations like that. And you know what? I run matches. If there's something that is not safe, I am 100% fine with someone pointing it out. There have been times we're setting up stages, and I've got this idea to do something, and someone goes up and goes, "Hey, if we do this, we could be shooting. Someone could shoot the steel too close. This could put a situation where they're shooting over there, and we're over here." Match directors, people designing stages, there are so many details that they're looking at that, like, sometimes the elephant in the room is not there. So don't be afraid to speak up and say, "Hey, is this safe? Like, I have concerns about this," because maybe it is, and they've said, "Oh, no, because XYZ is doing this and it's going to be safe." And you could go, "Yeah, that makes sense." Or they say, "Crap, no, it's not going to be safe. Good catch, So next, and this is maybe the whole point of this, racing the clock does not change these rules. The reason I say this, so ROing a lot, I see a lot of shooters, from the brand new guy coming through to the people that when they show up at the match, they are fighting for first, second, and third. I can assure you 120% that the people who are winning the match are not ignoring, disregarding, or racing through any of these. Mike's a good example. Our friend Trevor Saunders, John Stoner is a friend of ours who shows up. I see every one of these guys flip on safeties, take their finger off, muzzles in a safe direction. There is nothing that they are doing wrong. And I've seen some of them lose time because they are doing a safer action. They are doing the stage in a safer way than sometimes other people, because they understand that they can do this, be safe, and have a fast stage time. They're not shortcutting anything. All their other actions are shortcutted. The stuff that isn't safety is shortcutted, but the actual actions of safety is, I will watch them look the gun into the holster, lose a half a second, getting that gun safely, if it's like a hot holstering situation, safely into the holster, and then they take off running, or then they go and grab their rifle, or then they unsling. They're putting the safety on before they set it down, or they, sometimes they'll clear a gun out if they feel like that's the safer situation. They're not cheating any of these rules to beat you. I know I see people, and I think they get this idea that like these guys are fast, and what are they? They're not cheating you out of your win with safety. They're cheating you out of your win because they're doing everything else faster. So, Mike, what do you have to expand on that?
Right. Yeah, and it's not just holstering, safety manipulation. This last match had a lot of movement with loaded rifles and stuff, and every time move, safety on, muzzle in a safe direction, safety on, muzzle in a safe direction. I know a lot of the people. It's kind of easy to get complacent with a long gun because you're like, well, I've got really good muzzle control over this. I know I can keep this downrange while I'm moving, and I'll have my finger up out of the trigger guard. Modern sporting rifles, if we want to be real correct about it, but it doesn't matter what pattern of modern rifle you're running for most of these events. The safety is right there. It's super easy to get on and off, in and out of your safe fire modes, and it costs you really nothing in time. So take that time to save that. If I'm transitioning ports on a VTAC board, I'll safe. It's not just running from a position. That's just spots on a barricade. Or, if Ryan's got one of the tank trap hedgehogs that are really common right now, that are so fun to shoot off of, where you have to shoot off of like 2 or 3 index points on it, the gun's going on safe. It does not cost you really anything. And it's so easy to program that into that subconscious competence.
Yeah, because if you torch around and do a VTAC board, point blank, there's going to be there could very easily be some splinter and shrapnel. I mean, you have your eyewear on, right? We didn't even talk about eyes and ears. That's a totally separate conversation that people seem to not want to wear eye protection, but I'm not even going to start on that. But splinters can get around eyewear. I mean, it can bounce off your head. It can, no one wants that. So Mike's 100%. The safety, if I'm shooting a VTAC, I have to take the gun off my shoulder to switch positions. On almost every gun, AK is excluded, I think. But even then, there's aftermarket stuff to make your AK safety a little bit quicker. By the time it's even halfway off my shoulder, the safety's on. And before I can even get it back up on my shoulder, I can have my finger there flipping the safety off. I mean, Mike said, the AR is the most popular. So many of the other guns that are designed nowadays are just AR safety moved in maybe a slightly different position. So, and if your gun isn't easy to turn on and off safe, consider why you're using that gun. because it may be a really, really cool, but if it's going to cost you, a safety thing, maybe think or be accepting that, like if I'm shooting my AK and I'm taking my, I got to remove my hand from the firing grip and flip it on and off. I'm just going to be a little bit slower with my AK because that's just what I need to do to safely do it. So good on that one.
And like, as Ryan pointed out, I've got an AK. Ryan's got an AK. They're silly fun to run. They're all like driving a farm implement across the range, just different grades. Some are John Deere and some are that off-brand Korean stuff. But still, there is
leave my AK out of this.
There is plenty of aftermarket safety options for things, like AKs that position safety manipulation in such a way that it can be done very quickly and very smoothly. So there's really no excuse. No excuse, none.
Yep.
For not taking that small fraction of a second to keep yourself safe, keep the RO safe, keep your fellow competitors safe, and you know what? The people that don't even know a match is going on or even part of the match, mile away. Well, if you send a round over a bay, it's going to come down somewhere. And we're fortunate that a lot of matches take place in rural areas, but at the same time, rural areas are full of homesteads, livestock, and we're all responsible for every single projectile that leaves our gun.
Every bullet's got a lawyer attached to it. I 100% believe that. The next one's just a real quick aside. Do not catch a dropped gun. It's your instinct. I don't know what you do to fight against it, but fight against it. When you drop it, especially a handgun, that's the big one. I would say even long guns and stuff. When you drop it, your natural instinct is to grasp for it. Well, if I catch it like this, now my finger's in the trigger guard, and I go to grip it. I don't know how often it happens, but every couple years I hear about somebody at a USPSA match or a 3-gun at a match that dropped a pistol, went and tried to grab it, and it went off. Most guns are drop safe. The majority of modern guns are drop safe. There are exceptions. Even the exceptions that don't have some kind of active drop safe are fairly safe even when dropped, just because of the way the mechanism works, even though if it's not intentional. And if you are removing those drop safes, back in the day in 3-gun, people would actually remove the little striker block, because it made your Glock trigger like a little less shitty. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you want a better trigger, get a 2011, get rid of your Glock. Or follow me here, practice with your Glock until you can shoot it well, because Mike Ford can kick the crap out of me at pistol with a Glock, a stock Glock, and I'm shooting a 2011, and it has all to do with him being a good pistol shooter and me not being as good of a pistol shooter. It's the Indian, not the arrow. But regardless, don't grab a drop pistol. Nothing really more to add to that. We're moving on. The next one, I know we're trying to keep this short, but this could get a little lengthy. Safe kit. What you take, we see so much of this in run and gun. 3-gun and USPSA seems to be a little more clear cut as to what people carry on the, not always, but it seems to be less of an issue. Run and gun, we see some horrid kit. We're not new shaming. Listen, the way you shake out your kit, that's what a lot of people love about run and gun. They get this idea, this is my end of the world kit. This is my martial law. I'm a police officer, the yada yada, whatever your, this is my LARPing kit. Like, we LARP, who cares? This is fun. But people get this idea, well, I need to go shake it out, see how this would work if I really ever had to use it. Awesome. Great. Go do it. But before you do that, really think about it. I don't know his name. I'm not trying to put shame on him. We had a guy come to our first stage this weekend. He had some kind of nylon jungle rig. It did not look it looked of dubious quality. I don't know what he had, some kind of belt on. He had a backpack type sling thing. Then he's got his rifle sling. He's got like a folded up Kydex holster, which can be all right, you know, the like go, but this one probably not so much, to where the very first stage he shows me, goes to unload or goes to show me clear rifle, because he's always got to show a clear rifle. He can't even get his rifle on sling, so he's got to take his bag off. He's got to do this. He shows me his rifle. Then I need him to show me his pistol clear. He can't get his pistol. It takes him forever to get his pistol out of the holster. Then he can barely get it back in the holster. I said, because he's got to load his holster on the other part of the stage. I said, you can't run the stage like this. Like, you're going to have to get your kit squared away, because I mean, he's trying to like put his other hand back here because it's kind of behind his hip. And it was not a very good, his kit was not good for what he was trying to do. He kind of got it squared away. But even then, when we got over to the other side, he literally had to take out his medical shears and cut clips off of his jungle rig or something to get his pistol in the holster. Again, this guy looked, I think he was fairly new. I don't think he knew better. I hope that was the wake-up call to like look at some different gear and some different kit. But a little bit of practice beforehand, a little bit of dry fire, a little bit of like looking around, asking what other people use, would have really saved him a lot of trouble. And I think his enjoyment of the match would have been better. Does that seem accurate, Mike?
Yes, and I know exactly who you're talking about, because my fellow RO actually physically had to go hands-on with the guy, moving coats, straps, and stuff to help him safely reholster after clearing the pistol at the top. And our stage was a hot holster with a like 25, 30-yard sprint climb up a hillside. Like, the fact that he's even got it in the holster for the hot holster part, and it didn't go off or fall out going up that hillside, is amazing. This is a really good opportunity to, look at some of the squared away shooters in our sport that, they've got YouTube channels. It's not just us. There's Run and Gun Nation with Jimmy Nutt. Matt Stennett posts his videos. You can see equipment working and how it works. Even the more famous gun tubers, guys like Brass Facts and Grand Thumb and like all those, like, yes, they've got some cool guy kit, but generally that is the kit that's been watered down. Like, hey, this works. They've sorted it all out. They panned through. And this is the gold. And I say, if you show up with a nylon holster, not saying it can't work, but it's generally a really bad place to start. So I'm gonna say, obviously you need to be able to get your pistol in and out of the holster clearly. Don't have gear. These 80s splot rigs that people are getting from like Sportsman's Guide and Amazon, where they got a nylon holster like tucked into the side of their belly or facing this way. Well, guess what? You're probably even breaking the rules of firearm safety putting a gun in there, especially the ones that are like these weird cross draw stuff. And like, we had some guy at Heartbreak. He's got his 2011 in that thing. And it's like, so not only are you have a cross draw holster, which is a no for safety reasons, but you're putting a gun with a daggone hair trigger. I mean, there's a Staccato XC, folks. It's a retardedly light trigger.
At least it's not a TSO light.
It's pretty close. But like, yeah, take the time and think through the process with the safety stuff in mind, because when you're dealing with hot holstering or putting a gun away after your load and make ready command, it's not just you that you could be endangering. It's the ROs, it's the competitors over there on wait time, or the people in your squad loading their mags for their turn on the 3-gun stage. Be safe, be smart. Don't bring equipment that puts you and other people in jeopardy. So I'm sad that probably a lot of the people that are doing this aren't watching this.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
if
hopefully
your
they
friend
are.
is the guy doing it, or if you know someone doing it, preach the gospel. Buy him a good holster for Christmas or birthday. Do something to help them out.
Well, and here's the thing. If you are new and you're watching this, look around at what people are doing. If 90% of the people are doing something and you want to do something different, make sure you have a really, really good reason for doing it. And so a good example of this is a real world. Most people outside the waistband, strong side hip carry. There's very, very good reasons for this. That is what. Now, we have a friend that, because of some hip issues, some life stuff, weight on their hips really hurts them, and they have issues. They have a chest rig with a holster. Normally, I would not recommend that. Normally, they would not recommend that. They understand. They've been doing this a long time. They understand what they need to do to safely do that. He understands if it's hot holstering, he's taking a lot longer. He's bringing it in. He's making sure as he holsters, he's not pointing it at himself. It's slower to draw. It's slower to reholster. He understands what that takes to make that happen and understands why he's doing that. He is not doing a chest holster because he thinks it looks cool or they did it on XYZ show and, man, that looks cool. That must be what the cool guys do. No, 99% of them have got a Safariland on their hip and strong side hip, So we're not saying you can't have reasons to do something different. You absolutely can have reasons to do something different. But if you're brand new, you probably haven't figured out that one secret trick that's so much better than everyone else that I need. If I just do this, I mean, we saw 2 or 3 belly holsters. Like, they're on their belly. They're sideways like this. Again, if I'm drawing, I got to really, I now have to move my body sideways to pull the gun out so that I'm not muzzling the people at my side. I don't know why they're running that. Maybe they have health reasons. Maybe they have other things that my guess is that they just got the kit somewhere. They saw it. They thought it looked like a cool way to do it.
Looking God's sale.
Yeah. Whatever it is. But it's way different. And there's a good reason that it's different because it's not better. It's not safer. And it's probably going to cost you time, money, and energy. So that I would say, look at what 90% of the people are doing and do that first until you have a really, really good reason not to do that. So nail, done, moving on. Redundancy. We have a lot of redundancy of safety. Run and gun. Before you leave the start finish, they're going to check if it's a cold range, different ranges. Sometimes you can carry a hot pistol. I've never shot a match that let you carry a hot rifle. Quite a few of them, because of range rules, your rifle and your pistol have to be cold until you get to the stage, and you're allowed to make ready. So when you're there, they check empty, make sure they're empty. You take off. You get to my stage. The first thing that I'm going to do is check your guns and make sure they're empty. And you know what? When you go to leave my stage, even if it was an all rifle stage, I'm going to check your rifle and your pistol again before I send you on. And you're like, well, Ryan, I just checked it. Like you saw me check, we just checked it together. That's great. We're going to check it again. Because you know what? I am a human and I make mistakes and miss things. Not going to get into it. I've RO'd a long time and there was an issue, and it wasn't it was a safety thing in that I didn't do what I should have. It wasn't a safety thing. It's like someone got hurt or someone got close to getting hurt, but I missed a redundancy that I should have got. And that was on me as the RO. That was on the competitor because they are responsible for their guns. But the point is, we have those redundancies in place because if the guy at the last stage forgot to check, now I'm checking and I caught it. And now we know we're safe. Because honestly, in this case, the most dangerous gun is the one that someone thinks is unloaded and doesn't follow those rules we talked about earlier. And it happens. And this weekend, it was a wake up call for me. Like, before they left, I checked everything. When they got there, I didn't check, and it was not an ideal situation. I was a little, and we talked about it a lot in our chat, me and some other competitive shooters, and there's things I was like, yeah, like it was hectic at the beginning, things were happening, but like as an RO, I dropped the ball on that, and like that's a conscious thing for me going forward. So here we are, we're 8 or 9 years into competitive shooting. I've been ROing for 7 of those, maybe. I mean, for a pretty long time. And I like to consider myself a pretty squared away RO. And I made a mistake, didn't check something. And that's the reason we do this. This redundancy keeps us from getting hurt.
Right. And a little transparency. The issue involved guns with no magazines and rounds in chamber. So a lot of that initial visual indicator that a weapon's probably been cleared, magazine out, it wasn't there. And so, in the chaos of the event, ROs are responsible, the shooters are responsible, the match directors everyone is responsible to try to make the event as safe as possible. And so you can't get complacent. So folks, help yourself, help the ROs. Let's keep these things as safe as possible.
Yep. And the redundancy caught it. So in that way, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just letting people go off half-cocked and I'm like really scatterbrained. But it did not go down how I think it should have gone down safety-wise, and my actions didn't go down completely how I would have liked. And so it was a learning lesson. So I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, so I'm not mentioning names or real specifics, but I'm calling myself out in that I need to make sure that I'm staying on top of all that. So we won't dwell on that. Practice. Ryan, how do we practice safety? Very, very easily. The same way that you practice a lot of things with guns. It can be really cheap. Dry fire. The first thing, and let's get this out of the way, dry fire safety. I hope I didn't just lose Mike. Okay, I lost your picture, but first thing about dry fire safety. Double, triple, quadruple check that the gun is empty. That's first rule. Second rule, no live ammo in the room. Don't dry fire in your reloading room. Don't dry fire. If you got an ammo room, you keep everything. Your gun safe's got ammo in it. Don't dry fire in any room with ammo in it. Third, still, you need a safe backstop. If you're in an apartment and you got a neighbor on one side and we know the apartment walls are paper thin, don't dry fire towards their room. Like, you need to find a way to do this safely. So if you are following all of those rules, you're double, triple checking, your ammo's out of the room, all that stuff. Here's some tips. The first and easiest one is for muzzle first one I'll say is every time you're doing something in dry fire, if I'm practicing pistol, I'm practicing pulling the gun out and getting the safety off when I want, and then only being on the trigger when I want. That's my first, every time I dry fire, I'm making sure that every action I do is safe. When I'm done with that, I'm going to put it back in the holster. I'm going to do whatever my safety protocols. For me, I put my hand on my chest. I bring it back. I keep it pointed away. I look it into the holster, and that's my safety protocol. Whatever it is, always practice doing that safely. Mike, name one for yourself. I know we got a couple here. What's another way they can practice gun safety?
In like your training environment and stuff, it's not just your dry fire, your live fire sessions too. Don't just do like a stand and deliver, or do little short movements, do things where you can practice getting that safety on and off, and make it subconscious competence. So everything from your training sessions, your match prep, all the way up to the day of the match. Like everything you can do, you can incorporate safety in. And a lot of it is a little bit of forethought goes a long way.
Okay, yeah. So I got a couple more good ones. We'll go. Okay, so dry fire again. Muzzle discipline. We've had this at some local matches. Lateral movement, left and right. So I'm a right-handed shooter. If I'm moving left, it's very, very easy for me to point my muzzle parallel and downrange and run this way. That's pretty easy. If I'm running left to right and I'm doing that, now I'm pointed uprange, less than ideal. So practicing moving this way and having my gun that way, moving this way, where are my hands? What am I doing? My hand can't be out here pumping, you know. These are things that we can practice in dry fire. You could pick a point on the wall and practice running and moving around and getting up and down off the ground, whatever, and always keeping that muzzle pointed at that safe direction. Because ideally, again, this is context. There's a lot to it. Ideally, your muzzle should be rifle, long gun, pistol, should always be parallel to the ground and as 90 degrees to the back berm or your safe area as possible. Sometimes it'll move a little bit, but that's ideal. So we've had some people, they start moving sideways and their gun starts going towards the 180. It's not great. One of our friends, we were talking about this episode, he mentioned one, and I just was reminded of it because I'm sitting in a chair here. If I'm drawing seated in a chair, seated in a car, and I do my regular draw stroke up, I'm pointing at my legs. So if I'm going to drawing from a seated position is going to be a little bit different, a little bit awkward. That's something you can practice at home. You could practice drawing while laying on the ground. You could practice. Think of some situations a demented match director may put you in, sitting on a porta-john, as we've done more than once. All of this, you need to be able to safely draw and holster, safely pick up your rifle, all while having pointed in the right direction. So, in a safe direction. So these are just a couple dry fire things. I'm sure you can think of more. If you got something and you're like, hey, I think I have a problem with this. How can I practice it? Email us, call us, catch us online somewhere. We'll if we don't know it, we'll find someone who can give you a safe dry fire drill for it. Like Mike said, live fire is absolutely, these have to be safe, but so much of this can be done in dry fire without going to the range, without spending $1 on ammo, and just getting comfortable with using guns in a way that, where Mike said, it's a unconscious competency. Mike would have trouble if you put him in a chair. He would have trouble drawing the gun and muzzling his leg because he's so used to doing it in a way that doesn't. So, Mike, any last things to add before we wrap this one up?
No, I think we've done a decent job of covering it. And if people want to get into a further discussion about it, then we'll catch you in the comment section.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, ask questions, comment. If we said something, I mean, so there's some nuance to some of this. I don't think it's that nuanced, but like if we said something, you're like, hey, I think you're wrong because of XYZ, share it. I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. If there's something that we can do to clarify and help people, or you can straighten us out, absolutely. We want this to be a safe sport. And so thank you for watching. We're going to try to get a couple after actions out here soon as me and Mike get some more time together. So we'll catch you out in a match.